And that's why you should reconsider. Oh, or not.
Prisoner BigBadBurns, you have been selected for
rehydration,
to perform
penal labor,
in accordance with
the mandatory sentence reduction forced labor program.
Your assignment is
Educational entertainment video media production.
Oh great, so I'll be making like documentaries and infomercials. I always thought myself the creative type.
No.
You will be making YouTube-based
Video game review style content.
No! I'll at least get some ad revenue and sponsors, right?
Incorrect.
You'll be adding content to an already oversaturated genre.
No!
Void Bastards. It's an FPS roguelike game developed by Blue Mancho, a game developer I hadn't heard of until making this video. And no wonder, they don't have a ton of games. Card Hunter was their previous title released in 2013, which seems to be some sort of RPG card collection tabletop hybrid. Yes, that is an uninformed breakdown. I don't want to play that game. It then took another 6 years to release Void Bastards. That was in 2019. And only just in 2024 did they release their newest title, Wild Bastards. It does have a similar aesthetic to Void Bastards, but with a cowboy setting. Judging by the reviews, people seem to be disappointed because it maybe doesn't play exactly the same way as Void Bastards, people expecting a sequel rather than this spiritual successor. But I, however, still look forward to playing it in the future. But I digress. Void Bastards might have been developed by Blue Mancho, but it was published by... Oh, this can't be right. Humble Bundle? Now that's a name I haven't heard for over a decade, and I was actually surprised to see that they were still running. Now, although this game isn't a AAA and it's been out for a few years now, it's still $24.99 sterling or about $30 on Steam. Right, so I think we've had enough preamble. I want to try to get into the actual game now. I'm going to be playing Void Bastards in the hard difficulty. It's not that I'm not a hard bastard, but I don't want to be clawing my eyes out before the end of the video, fighting against spongy enemies, constantly having no ammo, and dying to a sneeze. To me, for in most cases, the difficulty before last in these boomer shooter-esque games is the way to go, aka ultraviolence and doom. Because fuck Nightmare. So Void Bastards takes place in a bureaucratic nightmare of a future in space.
Failure to provide maximum cooperation to WCG guards is punishable by genital torture in accordance with subsection 484F.
Where people are arrested and flash frozen for any small indiscretion. We are rehydrated with the express purpose of repairing our stranded ship, the Void Ark, and saving ourselves and the other 1 million dehydrated prisoners, fighting off pirates and the various residents of the nebula that have been mutated by a strange gas found in the nebula. To be honest, the worst part of all this for me is the bureaucracy. I loathe bureaucrats. Fortunately, we'll be obliterating many of their mutated walking corpses throughout our time here.
Whoops-a-daisy. It looks like you've run out of bullets. Ammunition requests can be filed at the Void Ark. Oh dear, return to the Void Ark is currently prohibited. This prohibition will be lifted when you obtain the line printer, or in the event of your death.
Alright, we've been dumped right into the action, but we've not been requisitioned with ammunition for our weapon. The game uses this as an opportunity to teach us the gameplay loop besides the combat. Explore the ship, collect junk, that's the game. Also, due to the lack of ammo, we learned that sneaking will play a pivotal role, at least in the early game. So since I have no ammunition, the first enemies that we find here are thankfully tucked away behind glass, so we can ignore them for now. Our first actual threat, however, is the gun points. A variety of these can be found throughout the game. Really, all we need to do to avoid them is not stand in front of them. For now, there isn't much else that can be done about them, so I sneak around them to acquire the line printer, our first action item.
Well done. I'll be sure to note this requisition of a line printer in your parole hearing. Return to the Steve is now recommended.
And suddenly, the pirates arrive.
FYI, a vessel associated with dangerous occurrences is approaching. Might I suggest a rapid evacuation?
So I begin to run like shite. The exit is right there. Well, shit. It's at this moment I try to fire my gun, forgetting that I actually don't have any ammunition, so I'm screwed and I die. So with death, it becomes abundantly clear that the protagonist doesn't matter. The character is expendable and replaceable. We realize that humanity has been boiled down into a product, a thing that can be owned by companies. Capitalism has reached its apex incarnation and all hope is lost.
OA H&S violations have resulted in a premature end-of-life situation. Recruiting replacement client. Issuing WCG client care package.
But the robot said something funny, so I guess it's grand. We are now Stevens C, a smoker, which means he's gonna cough. Stevens is now set out to complete the mission of his predecessor, obtain a citizen card. So now with a short prelog / tutorial out of the way, we're treated to the star map. This is how we will navigate through the rest of the game. It is kind of reminiscent of FTL Faster Than Light, except nobody but horrible mutants are on these ships. This game takes a lot of inspiration from previous titles, and that is likely in no small part due to Jonathan Che's involvement in the game. Notably, his major roles previous to this were his production in both Bioshock and System Shock 2. This game oozes with that similar feeling of being alone in a place after something cataclysmic and horrifying has happened, despite the wacky wrapping paper. I also briefly want to mention the comic book theme that the game is working with. For me, it's very reminiscent of 13, with its comic book style down to the movement of close-by enemies' footsteps having a visual sound effect element, and how it pushes the narrative forward with comic book paneling. I know that that isn't the only game that uses this style, but it's the one that came to my mind most immediately. When selecting a ship, there will be a breakdown of a few details before actually starting, such as what enemies you'll encounter, as well as junk and useful items for crafting. I'll get into crafting a bit later on in the video. I can only be so choosy at this point about what ship I enter, as I have limited food and fuel, so I need to go into as many as I can and gather these resources to continue. Right off the bat, I encounter a janitor.
Hello?
A fairly simple enemy that are fairly slow, big hitbox, and easy to avoid projectile, and it takes a couple of pistol shots to the head to kill them. No bother. Also, my first chance to fire a weapon. The pistol feels okay to shoot, nothing special, but it makes a nice sound and will be a staple throughout the game. As I progress through the level, I come across a screw, which seems like a mutant riot cop. Thankfully, he is stuck in this room. This is a void arsehole I don't want to mess with right now, so I don't. I flush the janitor out the airlock. And promptly leave. Mission complete. I get a reward screen, breaking down everything I gathered and stowing it away for later use. Yay! Since I got the buzz box on that ship, I can make the Bushwhacker, which is just a proximity mine really. This next ship is sporting a military theme, and one of the first things I do is pay merits to authorize opening this drawer. These merits are used throughout the game to open loot containers, get more out of various machines, like extended oxygen or disabling security, buying items in shop, and other applications as the game progresses. This ship also contains our first tourists, little blobby dudes who will ask me for directions and want to see the sights. Unfortunately, when I approach them, they explode. Best to be avoided, but typically takes a shot or two with a pistol and we don't need to worry about them. They can be useful for getting rid of other enemies though. I access the helm controls, allowing me to see all the items and containers on the map when I am greeted to a screw. And he's not behind glass, he is right there. These guys are walking tanks, ton of health, nasty up close. Their attack is basically a 360 shotgun. I have no chance even with my proximity mines to take them down, so I leave and lock the door behind me. Just then, I run into another one a couple of minutes later. I end up trapping myself in a room that means I have to go through a screw. So I strap up my boots, get out my bushwhackers, and get ready to take him on. And I'm dead. Now I'm Palmer. I lock doors quickly. This is how most of the game plays out. Loot ships until I die or I beat the game. And if it isn't obvious yet, the ships are all procedurally generated with different themes. You'll notice that we've kept the bushwhacker, so when a character dies we keep upgrades and weapons, but we will lose junk, food, fuel and ammunition. So this is how the game works moving forward. We pick apart the metaphorical carcass of those who have come before us and died. Palmer now goes on to encounter the first Juve. A mutant child who has the mannerisms of what I would call a smick, the British chav, Aussies a bog on, and I guess for the Americans a redneck, but I don't know if that tracks. Really simple, easy enemy. 2 shots to the body or 1 to the head and they are gone. However, I would quickly learn that their strength is actually in their numbers. After getting the parts to make the stapler, which is the shotgun of this game, we take it on to the next ship. It's satisfying enough. It's no Doom super shotgun, but it gets the job done. Unfortunately, Palmer doesn't get much use out of the stapler before retiring. Meet Pittman, arrested for evading arrest and can kinda avoid pirates. Unfortunately, he can't avoid the gunshots from a turret. At least he managed to upgrade the pistol. This is Hill. They are short and formal. The formal trait changes the names of the enemies. I wanted to point this out just in case it became confusing. Hill unlocked the Spiker, which I hate honestly. It's kinda useless. It poisons enemies, but you more or less need them to die as soon as possible, so I never really use it. While I'm talking about useless items, we also get the Kitty Bot. It's used for luring enemies and explodes. Again, I don't really use this. It's not because it's necessarily bad, it's just there are better items that would take up the slot that it needs. In fact, I want to clear this up right now. Throughout the game, I typically always take the pistol and the bushwhackers. Occasionally I substitute them out for bangers or clusterfucks, which are just grenades or time clustered mines. But there is one thing I always take with me from this point on, and that's the Zapper. The Zapper is by far the most useful item in this game. It stuns everything. Gun points, pirates, and all mutants. It just makes everything easier and it makes the game moving forward not a breeze, but a hell of a lot easier. Unfortunately, Hill at some stage during her life acquired the Yahoo trait, which means every time she picks something up, she does this.
Putting the lube back in insalubrious.
Well, look who's here. Hey,
Hill.
you look like you've got something to say. Do you?
Yes, I certainly do. I have to. My planet needs me.
Wow.
Hill.
Came from another planet?
Hi, Walker. Well, Walker's bio is kinda... Bye, Walker. Next up is Shaw, who's the first to encounter the Outpatient, a big floaty head that fires explosive vomit at you. They're a bit spongy, but they're slow and big, so they're easy enough to deal with. Eventually, this prisoner is the one to finally get the ID card that allows us to finish the citizen card. But lo and behold, to nobody's surprise, something goes wrong. We haven't registered with HR, so now we need an HR computer. This will now become a trend moving forward. Fly through the nebula, grabbing the parts you need to progress, and then hit another road bump. There are still a few more enemies I haven't yet encountered in the game. First off are the patients. They're little floaty voodoo heads that scream obnoxiously at you, and pretty much every weapon, bar explosives, is a total waste of time on them, because it takes a full magazine of anything to kill them. I absolutely despise these void fuckers. Next are the spooks. When they're alerted to your presence, they will disappear and reappear to flank you and confuse you, but are easily dispatched with a quick zapper shot and a couple of hits to the head. And lastly are the Zeks. They have a front-facing shield and fire the same explosive attack as the Outpatients. They can be hard to deal with in tight corridors, but if you can get an explosive behind them or flank them, they aren't too bad. I spend the next several hours dying over and over,
life support systems critical,
and slowly gaining parts to create the HR computer, and then I need to make the water killing system, because of course we aren't done yet. Honestly, at this point I'm losing hope. This game is hard, and the constant fight for resources is really frustrating.
life support systems critical.
And then I get Wood. Wood doesn't seem that intimidating at first glance, but this man is a golden god, a king among men. He will rip this nebula and these void bastards asunder. Throughout this game so far, I have managed not to encounter any pirates by avoiding them or blowing them up with torpedoes, but I've got Wood now, and he doesn't fear pirates.
Alright pals, we've got a runner over here. The bomb pod is jammed, so fan out and scalp him.
I'm not exactly sure what the pirates actually do, because as you just seen, that was an absolute mess. I didn't see them fire a single shot or do anything of note. I was using the nebulator to defeat the pirates. I don't use it much except for one other time later on to deal with pirates again. Basically just a rocket launcher, and it destroys most things in its way. Wood isn't unstoppable because of the nebulator though. It's thanks to the traits I got while playing that made him unstoppable. With Brawny, Eagle Eye and Deadeye, I couldn't really be stopped. It also helped that I had the Heartstopper, which was giving me extra lives, along with the Riveter, which is a submachine gun, which I fucking love because this is what it does to patients. So yeah, it kills patients good. But honestly, remember how I said earlier that the patients were the only thing really giving me trouble still? Sure, there's harder variants of enemies starting to appear as you progress, but they're dealt much in the same way as their weaker counterparts. This leads me on to one of my issues with the game. Early on, the focus is on avoiding enemies, and when you do get in the encounters, being able to plan quickly in your head how to avoid certain death. But by the end of the game, you become a killing machine. The rest of the game I spend running down corridors, stunning and mowing down enemies. No one is able to beat off Wu. Finish up the water cooling, then the transmitter, and finally the red certificate. And that's it, that's the last item. We escape the nebula on the Void Ark, going home a hero. Or we would be if it weren't for the multitude of crimes we committed in the nebula. We are promptly flash frozen permanently. So Void Bastards is quirky and fun and has its own personality. Sure, it has some inspiration and stitching from other games, but what doesn't these days? It's what you do with that inspiration that makes something that resonates with people on a different level. Sure, perhaps the procedurally generated levels can become a bit repetitive the more you progress through the game, but honestly, there weren't many cases throughout the game that I was bored. Once I got a character rolling and understood how the enemies and mechanics worked, the ebb and flow of the game feels good and it can make you feel like a badass. That doesn't take away from how fun the early game is as well, with the claustrophobia and the confusion of the early game. All in all, I really like this game. It's nice, short and compact. If anybody else enjoys old school FPS that want a bit of a twist, this 100% is a great choice.